Bubs, how you doing? Destroy '04. How you doing, brother? All right. Sorry about that. Still trying to get used to this. I have to set things up a little bit differently because the camera's in reverse, so I'm not able to actually see the screen. So give a couple of minutes, let a few more folks join us, and then we will jump into this thing. Destroy, where are you located? Oh man, have you guys heard the news? The news that was released, I think like 4 hours ago or something like that. Mississippi. Okay, cool. Have you guys heard the news that was released? I think it was like 4 hours ago about the new Marvel movie that's coming out. Yeah, exactly. Christian, you got it right. What? Wait for more. Don't be sensitive, Bubs. No, so I heard a little while ago that Silk has, I guess she got a green light for a new movie. I haven't really read any of the details, but I saw that she received a green light for a movie. So I was actually going to some of my short boxes to see if I could find, I think I have her number one, and then I think I have that Amazing Spider-Man number four, where she makes her first appearance, where I think she was bitten on the arm, and you see her arm by the radioactive spider. So, unfortunately, my kids are asleep, and I think the short box with those books are actually in one of the rooms with the kids. So have to check it out. Yeah, exactly. Christian, shout out. We love comics for sure, because that's actually where I heard from it. I heard about it was from him, and actually he heard about it from somebody that subscribes to his channel. So again, just a great example of a wonderful community that shares news in a relatively timely fashion, right? Yeah, Bubs was being a little sensitive there. So today is a big day for me. And it's a big day because I took a chance doing something a little bit different than what I would have otherwise done. So I think it was back January, February, March, April. It was back in April. I really wanted to go see Stan Lee. And I had never met Stan before, I'd never been in the same room as him. I found out he was coming to a con not too far from where I live. And I was like, I am going to this con. I haven't been to a con since I was a teenager, but I was committed to going to this con. And I was trying to wrap my mind around what book I wanted to get Stan to sign. And there was a lot of debate around, do you get him to sign just whatever? Do you get him to sign a book that he was an editor for? Do you get him to sign a book that he was actually a writer for? And I kind of came to the conclusion that I wanted to get one that he was actually a writer for. I wanted to get a book that was actually meaningful to me because I wanted it to be one that I wanted to keep. And so, I got a little busy with work and then realized that the con was like that weekend. And I didn't go into a panic, but I was like, I need to figure out which book I'm going to get him to sign. And I ended up placing an order for a book. And the book arrived the day before I was supposed to go to the con. Like it was that day and I was going to sleep, and then it was the con was that very next morning, very early. So the book arrived. I was super excited about it, super excited to have the book. And it was in the house for a very short period of time because I went and, of course, got the book signed the next morning. And what happened is I was like one of the first people in line to get into the con. And I immediately went to the CGC facilitators table to complete my paperwork to, have my book get the signature series label, the yellow label. And, I was I think I was probably the third person actually in her line. And she and I got into a wonderful conversation about the particular book or really the two books, but one in particular that I was getting signed, where she kind of asked me, "Do you know who wrote it?" Well, of course I did. It was Stan Lee. "Do you know who did the creative?" Yes, it was John Romita. And then she asked me who, I think it was like the colorist or something like that. I was like, I have no clue who that was. So she got me on that little bit of trivia. But she said, "So you can get your book signed by Stan today, and then you can give me your book, and I will take your book to get it signed by John Romita." And so it had never really occurred to me that it was possible to like get a signature from John Romita. I mean, I was just happy getting the signature from Stan Lee. And so I had never really understood the CGC signature series process. I'd done some research, but I'd never gone through it, right? And I'm one of those people, I kind of, depending upon the thing, I have to experience it to truly understand it. And so the whole witnessing thing, I didn't quite understand how that would work. So this was a day really of like first, and it was a day of learning. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to get Stan's signature and I'm going to get John Romita's signature. I'm like, let's do it, So I completed the paperwork. It was a little bit more than what I wanted to pay because I was paying for her witnessing, her facilitating, the shipping, the CGC pressing, cleaning, grading, and then paying CGC shipping. So it was kind of a little expensive, right, to get the books done. And this woman was actually, she was really good at not trying to sell you her service so much as, I am going to do private screenings with these wonderful writers and artists, and here's when I'm going. Do you want to take advantage of it? And it was one of those things where it's like, it's kind of hard to say no. And I had never met this woman before. I had never experienced this service before, but I decided to take a chance. And I ended up, getting my signature from Stan. I actually jumped the line. So here's the thing. I buy books from four different local comic shops. And the reason for that is that I like to show the local comic shops some love. And in this case, it actually came back to me because one of the local comic shops was first in line at Stan Lee's signature. They didn't have VIP, they were general admission, but they were first in line. The owner let me jump in line with his guys, and I was one of the first people to get a signature from Stan Lee. And I heard that there were people that ended up standing in line for like 5-6 hours, and some didn't even get a signature and actually had to come back the next day. So again, it's just an example of why I tend to work with some of the local comic shops whenever I can. But long story short is I got the signature from Stan. That was a great experience despite everything that kind of transpired with Stan that weekend and some of the videos and some of the commentary and things that happened. But I was excited to have met Stan. I was excited to have my book signed by him and then to have this facilitator take my books. Yeah, 6+ hours, exactly. Yeah, I got lucky, brother. Cameron's making a couple of comments here. I would never call people peasants, but yeah, I got lucky. I had a plan. I worked the plan, and I am not sorry for that. But I ended up getting it, gave her my book, and what I ended up doing was I didn't know this woman, so I literally took video of her while she was like completing my paperwork and taking my book and stuff like that, because I'm like, if something happens, I want to have proof that I gave you my book, that you took my book. And I took, of course, lots of photos of the book when it was taken out of the original holder, right? Because it was actually a graded book that I purchased. And so she took it, and we had a great exchange. She gave me her card. That night, I actually sent her an email to thank her. And it was more because I wanted to establish a connection with her, so that if something went wrong, like I knew her email was real. I knew she was a real person, So I had this brief email exchange with her where I went kind of back and forth about thanking her for, offering me this great service and looking forward to getting the book back in my collection. And then the problem with like having someone else submit your books on your behalf is that things go dark. Like you don't know where that book is. Like you know what service you select and theoretically how long it should take, but it goes dark. I haven't spoken to that woman since that night. I had no ability to log into the CGC website to see the status of my book, and so it was a lot of faith, Pele, I'm gonna tell you, remind me to tell you something about We Love Comics, and I think he's a good guy. We Love Comics is a guy that actually inspired me to do a little bit better with my own videos, because he felt like I was cutting corners, I wasn't doing things to the best of my ability, and he was actually right about that. And I stepped up my game as a result, and he's been giving me a lot of wonderful advice. But he does like PGX, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's who he chooses to use. I just would never use them for my books, but that's me. DS Comics, how you doing, brother? Good to see you. Again, Pele, I'm gonna get back to you on some of the comments that you're making because I want to talk about that. So, it was a couple of months of silence, and again, I think I gave her my book on 4/7, and she told me when she was going to meet John Romita and what the private screening was all about and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't exactly know the timetable, and so I was at home today. Today's Friday. I was at home, and my family had just left, and I was about to get on a conference call, and the doorbell rang, and I look out the window. It was the FedEx man, and in his hands was a CGC box, and you know what the box looks like. If you've received it, you know the CGC box and the tape that they use for their boxes. So I knew what it was, and I went out. I signed for it. He gave me the package. I immediately came inside and unboxed it. And, I thought about, should I do a live unboxing and this kind of stuff? And it really wasn't the first time I had received the book. I had already gotten the book once before, again, months ago. Didn't hold it, didn't that long, right? Didn't even record a video of it for you guys because it was literally, it came in and it went out. So I chose to unbox it kind of privately, and so I was a little disappointed, and I'll explain why. But this is the first CGC signature series book that I've ever purchased, that I've ever submitted and purchased, right? Because I have others that I've just bought, but I've never submitted it. So, and certainly this is the first with two signatures from two legends, that being Stan Lee and John Romita, who was responsible for developing the look for Spider-Man, one of my favorite characters. So let me read this real quick. See what you guys gotta love it. Gotta love the CGC. So the book that I picked up originally and gave to this woman is Amazing Spider-Man number 50. And this is the first appearance of Kingpin. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous, iconic book that was part of my 2018 wish list. And you can kind of see, I'm going to zoom in here so you guys can see the John Romita signature. And then, of course, Stan Lee's down at the bottom. So a little bit of a glare. I apologize for that. Kind of hard for me to see which way it's going. There we go. Okay. So I got the signatures. The book looks amazing. I had the book cleaned and pressed. And when I got the book, it was originally a thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. So again, I wanted it to be a book that was meaningful to me. And this book was already on my wish list. It was a book that I wanted for lots of different reasons, right? First appearance of Kingpin, it was when Spider-Man basically, or Peter Parker basically turned his back on being Spider-Man, for lots of different reasons, right? He had a lot of internal turmoil about, what he was doing and why he was doing it, and how he could support his family and his love life and all that kind of stuff. So it, to me, was a very powerful book. And I love the color red, and there's a lot of red on this, and it was a gorgeous book that spoke to me, and I'm pleased that I picked it up. Yep, there you oh, there you go to Planet Awesome. I've heard about Planet Awesome. Jim Lee is he's down he'll be down in Vegas, right? I think. Yeah, it does look like it was meant to be part of the cover, doesn't it? Where he placed it. I wish I had actually gotten Stan to sign in a different place, but the direction that we were given when we were in line was that we were not to approach Stan, we were not to touch Stan, we were not to talk to Stan. These are literally the words that this woman uttered to a room full of people, and this was right after Stan was getting over. I think he had the flu, and so they were being extremely protective of him. Don't take photos of him. Don't get near him. Right. So it was a little disappointed that they kind of gave all the direction, but I get it because I think he probably signed his name a few thousand times. So I get it. But yeah, super excited about the placement of the signature. Super excited to have these two legends on a book that I honestly treasure. So when I purchased the book did not appear to have been cleaned or pressed to me. And so what I was hopeful was that by cracking the CGC case, by getting the book cleaned and pressed, that I would maybe bump it up a grade. That was at least my hope. And I had had a lot of conversations with folks around, the grading for CGC used to be much more strict back in the day. So if you send a book in now, there may be a chance that you can get a grade bump. I'd even had this debate with a couple of people around my Giant Size X-Men #1 that I have. And so the recommendation was get rid of the old holder, get it clean pressed, get it regraded, and get a grade bump. So I had a lot of internal tumult, if you will, about doing something like that because it seems risky. You buy it at a grade, and that grade has a price, and then you take it out of that case and you hope for a better grade. But what happens if the grade doesn't go up? It goes down. Did you overpay for that book? And it's just one of the kind of fears in my mind. Silver Age Dave is in the house. Talk about a legend. There you go. So there was always a little bit of danger in my mind about cracking a case and getting a book clean pressed, regraded, that kind of stuff. It was a lot of internal struggle. So I decided to do it for this book. I decided to do it because I felt like the book could use it, just based upon my visual observation of the book in the holder. You could see correctable defects in the book. The book didn't have any major defaults, no major problems. And I mean, I actually paid for that, right? I mean, I bought it at a certain grade because it looked a certain way and it was of a certain quality. And so when the book was a 7.5, so when I got it today, pause here. There's a little bit of a lag. That's what it came back at. It came back at a 7.0 instead of a 7.5. So little, I just recorded a video about this. I mean, I'm disappointed, yes, because I wanted an 8. At the minimum, I wanted a 7.5. But at the end of the day, I took a chance, and the ball did not bounce in my favor. But I still have an amazing book that I'm excited about, that I love, signed by two amazingly creative and talented individuals. And I don't know that it gets any better than that. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is. I took a chance. I came this close to buying an 8 actually of this book. And it's just like, you never know what could have happened with that. That could have fallen to a 7 or a 7.5. I mean, this could have been a 6.5, so you just don't know. You just don't know. You don't know what could happen. Silver Age Dave, thank you, brother. We've been working hard on this channel. We were just talking a little while ago about We Love Comics, who several months ago gave me a little kick in the pants. He sent me a private message and encouraged me to try a little bit harder than what I had been doing. And I was very appreciative of his advice to me privately. And I think the channel has kind of grown tremendously because of the advice that he had given me. No, I didn't. So again, this was DS Comics is asking the question of whether I included the old label with the new. I didn't, because to get the book signed by Stan, we had to take it completely out of the casing. And the facilitator was responsible for like bundling the book up and doing all that kind of stuff, and I had never done it before. I didn't even know if I could do that. So that could have been an opportunity for me, but it wasn't one that I seized. Maybe in the future, that's something that I'm going to consider, is just cutting the top off of the label and sending that in and seeing if that has any effect. So Pele has got it right. Again, I think I'm disappointed, but it's not that big of a deal. You know what I'm saying? I still have a great book, and it is what it is. I'm not going to worry about it. Thank you, Silver Age Dave. Silver Age Dave is commenting that Alex, the comics hoarder, Thanos, aka Matt, and myself should do another show. We ended up doing an impromptu show maybe a month ago. I had just gotten home, and these guys sent me a message like, "Hey, you want to jump on live?" I'm like, "Let's do it." So it was like my first live show, super impromptu. But I think the guys and I have some pretty solid chemistry, so maybe we'll do another. I think both of those guys have been pretty busy lately. I know I have been, because we just sold a house, bought a house, and it's just crazy right now. So maybe we will do another show at some point and kind of get everybody together. So again, am I a little disappointed? Yes, but it is not that big of a deal. This is still an amazing book. The other bright spot, and this is a little interesting. I actually, hold on, let me read this real quick. Oh, that's a good point. DS Comics is raising the point of sticking the old label back in there so that they can update the census based upon what's happening. I think that's legit. That's a legit rationale for doing it. Yeah. No. But Bubs is making a comment about would I trade this book? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because I mean, again, this is a book that I personally had signed by Stan Lee. And it's like we all probably grew up reading books where it's like Stan the Man, and Stan's making his his comments throughout the book, commentary by Stan the Man or whatever, as he goes through the books, he made those little comments to kind of, check out issue number 121 or whatever it is. It's just, you grew up with this guy, man. So the fact that I was able to stand in a room, breathe his air, and get a signature, there's no way I would trade this book for anything. So the other good thing is I actually gave the facilitator a second book. And the second book was Amazing Spider-Man 300. And so I actually bought 2 copies. I bought 1 copy from a guy on eBay, and I sent that book off to CGC. It was a raw book, sent it off to CGC to get it graded. The book actually came back at a 9.8 purple label. It was a restored book. And then the guy disappeared from eBay. So he definitely got me. So it was amateur color touch on the cover. And I don't even know if he did it. It could have been someone else that he bought the book from. Who the heck knows? Again, it is what it is. But because Amazing Spider-Man 300 was actually at CGC and I was going to see Stan, I decided to purchase another ASM 300. So I had another raw, and that's the book that I ended up having, that I gave to the facilitator. So we had it signed by Stan, and then as the same time I'm talking about, ASM 500, ASM 50, we had a conversation about ASM 300. And so she took the book to have it signed by 2 other individuals. And I don't know if you guys ever saw it, but there's a triple signature book, ASM 300, that is triple signed, that is like crazy expensive. So fingers crossed that this book comes back with all 3 signatures on it, and not restored, and hopefully a very good grade, because this copy looked better than the first copy that I sent off to CGC, and that came back, I believe, I want to say it was a 9.6. So fingers crossed that book comes in the next month or so. And then I'll do a live thing same way. Like a lamb, yeah, you might DS Comics. You might be right about that. There may be a couple fewer than what the census shows, just because of that. I think you raise a good point, and they should actually recommend that to people. I don't know that I've looked at their FAQs around that particular question, but that would be a really good one to add as an FAQ, maybe we can do a video on it. DS Comics has excellent taste. He does excellent videos about topics that really help like inform some of the things that I do and some of the things that I even film, to be honest with you. So, oh, they do recommend it. Okay, cool. Destroyer04 is basically saying he's not buying on eBay anymore. It's definitely some risk there. What I've actually moved towards is not necessarily buying from individuals so much versus stores. There's a couple like my comic shop is one that I buy books from. I actually bought this from my comic shop. They have their website with books on it for sale, and then they also sell on eBay. And sometimes there's differences in the price, so I will toggle back and forth between the two to see who has the better price. And then even on eBay, it's a thing of, do I have a coupon? Do I have eBucks? Do they offer some kind of kickback or something like that because you buy via the app? And then I kind of do the math to decide which is the better way to go. But as far as buying like really expensive books from individuals, I'm leaning away from that, and I'm leaning more towards buying, if I'm doing it on eBay, from a larger kind of company that has some reputation where you can take some action against. In fact, I purchased a book. If you guys watch my United States Postal Service hates comic books, that was actually a book that I purchased from them that was damaged, and they immediately issued me a refund. The book was chump change, but they immediately took care of it, and it was like the right thing to do, and I didn't have to haggle with a person at all. Torn page on the inside, yeah. Pele, that's another lesson that I've learned, and I've spoken about this before. What I've been doing, or what I've been thinking about doing, I should say, as a result of one of my first submissions, is taking the time to take the books out of the bag, look at it front and back, look at it thoroughly, like each page. That's a lesson that I learned, and that's also, again, something that We Love Comics and I have spoken about, and he's given me some really good advice on. So last thing you want to do is to send a book in and have the book be dinged because of a small mistake that you technically should have found. Yeah. Sold it and moved on, but it still hurt. Yeah, definitely, definitely. The stuff happens, man. I mean, I think we can all, all of us on here can probably tell horror stories of books that we've purchased that have been damaged off of eBay. We can probably tell just as many stories about books that we've sent in to CGC or other grading services that didn't quite come back at what we expected them to be. But I think, Pele kind of demonstrates the right attitude. Stuff happens. We make mistakes. It's like, just move on. It is what it is. And again, that's my philosophy. I'm not telling anyone how they should act or behave. I'm just saying that that's my philosophy of stuff happens, man. Let's just move on. It's comic books, right? Let's be honest. That was right to see you start grading. They'd only been in business 2 years at that point. Yeah, got my grail comic shop. Congrats, Tony Sanders, on that. Congrats, Tony. Silver Age Age, you have to get on Instagram, brother. That is the place to be. I know a lot of guys are actually, and maybe the person that mentioned this is actually doing it. A lot of folks are moving off of eBay and actually buying books on Instagram. And I think a lot of folks were doing that before to like avoid the fees of eBay. I actually bought one of my Hulk books, my Hulk 181. One of them, the lower grade, was actually bought off of Instagram. Met a guy, had a great conversation back and forth. Did friends and family. Book arrived a couple of days later. It takes a little bit of trust to do something like that, so I don't advise it unless you truly trust the person. But it's a great way to avoid the eBay fees. The other thing is, I think people are starting to do it because, and some of you may know this better than I, because I only caught the headline today, that I guess a law has been passed that retailers like eBay may now have to charging tax. So that could also have some ramifications on eBay selling. Yeah, a lot more people. Yeah. Silver Age Dave, there is no age limit, brother. If you're going into crack houses to buy comic books, you can get on Instagram. Trust me when I tell you. So I was curious, and I started talking about this at the beginning of the video, what you guys thought of the announcement today about Silk getting her own TV show. And I don't know, you guys tell me right or wrong. I thought it was interesting that I think Miles Morales didn't get a movie. He actually got a TV show. I'm sorry, a cartoon. But Silk, who I don't think is as popular as Miles Morales, gets a movie. So I'm just curious what people think about that. So, Silver Age Day, brother, I think that was actually one of the first videos that I watched of you. And that's when I was like, this is a dude that I like because I've actually purchased some books possibly from similar types of institutions and individuals. So we'll leave it at that. We won't tell either one of our wives where the books come from. So yeah, eventually, maybe, yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to read the comments here. There's a lot of them, so I'm trying to keep up. So somebody was saying, Todd was saying he thinks that Miles Morales will actually be in a movie at some point. You may be right about that. It was I just thought it was interesting that Miles Morales was actually given a cartoon first, and then the Silk was given a live action. So I don't know if that has anything to do with like the whole Spider-Man franchise being tied up at the moment, and maybe that's why they did it. I really don't know. Versus Silk, who is not a Spider-Man, it was a little bit apart from that, so they can tell her story a little bit differently. So I didn't know if it was like a rights thing, was why they decided to go that way. Okay, yeah, I don't even. The only cartoons I really get a chance to watch are the ones my 1 and 3 year old watch. So it could be interesting if he is in that new Infinity War movie. I have a new idea about some of that stuff. I'm gonna talk about in a separate video though. So anyway, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to jump on here and check it out. Again, this was my very first book that I have actually submitted for the signature series. It is signed by John Romita, not Junior, but John Romita Senior and Stan Lee. Super excited about this book. Originally purchased as a 7.5, but upon press clean and resubmission came back at a 7. But I will persevere because this is a gorgeous book that I'm happy to have in my collection. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to check out this video and hang out with me for a little bit. I think I'm getting better at these live videos and the setup and all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate you guys hanging in there with me on this one. If you have not subscribed to the channel, I encourage you to do so. There are a lot of wonderful videos that I've been trying to put out there about slabbing, why I get books slabbed, grading books, books that have been damaged by the United States Postal Service. And then I've got a great series that I've started to do about first appearances and first full appearances of characters that could potentially be pulled into the MCU. And so if you want to kind of get ahead of potentially, right, potentially get ahead of the curve of what happens with pricing when a book hits a movie, you might want to check out the video that I put up today and then also the back video on Adam Warlock's first full appearance. So, oh, Pele, before I go. So yes, the deal that We Love Comics has with PGX is that he gets to submit to PGX 4 books to be graded every single month. And, in exchange, I think, for putting that ad at the beginning of his videos. So, I mean, We Love Comics has a pretty solid following, and I hope one day to have a following as strong as his, but he has a solid following of people that watch his videos. And so he is essentially like an influencer, if you will, for PGX by putting that ad up there. I think he chooses to do the additional videos where he's talking about PGX and some of the controversy that happened recently. I think he was doing that to add to the dialogue, add to the discussion about what was happening out there. I don't know that he's obligated to do that, nor do I know if he's obligated to say positive things about PGX. The guy has CGC books, he has PGX, he has CBCS books. So He has books from all the companies, but he definitely has some loyalty and allegiance to PGX. There's no doubt about that. And yeah, I mean, I think it very well could be. It very well could be. I think the thing is that, and I've said this in some of my videos. I think the great thing about comic book collecting is that you get to decide what type of books you want to collect and how you want to collect and whether you want to get your book slabbed or not. And if you do decide to get your book slabbed, you have three companies that you can choose from, and you decide. I remember I did a lot of research up front where I was looking at the different companies, look at the different services that they offer, look at the reputation of those companies. I talked to a lot of people, like in person, not just on YouTube, but I talked to people at local comic shops about their experiences. And I ultimately landed on CGC and decided that that's the service that I wanted to use. And I only submit to CGC. I purchase CBCS books, but I have not and I will not ever purchase a PGX book. I just won't do it. But the other two grading services, I absolutely will. And I actually came close to signing up with CBCS. And one of the big reasons why I like CBCS was that they do the signature authentication. So I don't think that they have to witness. They will actually verify the signature of a book that you've signed previously. And that was one of the things that I found most attractive about CBCS, because I have a lot of books that I had signed when I was a kid, that of course there is no witness, and if you send it into CGC, it gets a green label, which isn't necessarily what you want. So that was why I almost went with them, but I decided that CGC was the service for me. So let me pause because I have a couple more thoughts. Pele, I think you're absolutely right. You have a choice to decide whether you want to watch him or not. And I watch some of his stuff. I don't watch all of his stuff because I think like you guys do, and so I don't watch it all, you know? Yeah, DS Comics, I do want to see what that 252 comes back at. I think you mentioned that in yesterday's chat when I was live, or maybe it was the day before, I can't remember. So it'll be interesting to see what that 252 comes back at. Fingers crossed, brother. Honestly, fingers crossed that it comes back at a 9.8. Because I got to have ASM 101. Go for it, Destroyer. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm just not a PGX guy. Also, here's my thought. So I was watching, I think it was somebody else's video that I was watching, and they were talking about, I want to say it was CGC, but I could be wrong. So there was a company that did grading services for coins. And what they started to do was they started to offer things like signature series stuff. So like you could get an American Eagle, and I'm making this all up, an American Eagle with like a Yankees case for it. And that American Eagle was in the Yankee case was actually worth more than the same coin that wasn't in a Yankee case. And so what happened was the coin market started to be artificially inflated and influenced by things that had nothing to do with the value of the thing that was being encapsulated. It's basically like this book suddenly becomes more expensive simply because it has a yellow label. The book is still the same, but the yellow label is what makes it special, therefore more expensive. And so it was almost like this idea that someone has this monopoly, and because they have this monopoly, they start to manipulate the market. And so my fear is that if CGC does dominate the third-party grading services, then you could have something like that happen, right? So you already have CBCS that was purchased by another larger organization. So CGC is the largest independent grading service that exists. And so it's just interesting to kind of see what's going to happen in the market. Last thing you want is a monopoly, because monopolies tend to not, bode well for the consumer. So yeah, no, and I'm not saying that coins are the same. I'm simply saying that if one person dominates, then that domination could lead to things that are detrimental for the consumer. That's the only point that I'm attempting to make. Yeah, and again, I completely agree. I completely agree that that the that the turnaround time for CGC is awful, right? I actually have a video coming up where I actually talk about some of that stuff, about the pros and cons of specifically CGC. But the turnaround times are extreme. And in one calculation that I did based upon having a book cleaned and pressed and graded, it was as much as 102 days for that whole process to take place. That is obscene. That is an obscene service, you know? Yeah, I mean, DS Comics, I think you probably know a lot more about coins than I do, so I'm going to defer to you. I was simply just trying to kind of highlight my fears using an example. That's all. So, again, I don't know much about coins at all. So, and you may be much more knowledgeable than I. So, you know, I think that competition isn't a bad thing. So, the challenge, however, is, you know, someone having the wherewithal, the cash, the ability to actually enter the market. That's kind of like the challenge. And PGX, in my opinion, doesn't really have a strong foot to stand on to really be a competitor to CGC. Unlike, you know, again, CBCS, which I think is definitely a pretty strong number two. And I know that some people will, and I think somebody said it in here, will actually slab books with CGC that they intend to turn around and sell because those books tend to sell for 10% more. I don't know whether that's true or not. I've never done the analysis to actually look at that. Maybe we get RB3 to do that analysis and tell us if there's something to that rumor that CGC books tend to go for 10% more. So I honestly don't know. So anyway, G, how you doing? I was wrapping this thing up. I appreciate you guys sticking with me. I absolutely love doing these live chats. The ability to kind of interact with you guys and to have a conversation, have a little debate. I absolutely love this thing. Silver Age Dave suggested that I get together with Thanatos, aka Matt, and Alex, the Comic Hoarder, for a live discussion again. I'm going to send these guys a message and see if we can make some magic and actually do something, because I enjoy this. I have a lot of fun in this community, and I want to thank you guys for welcoming me into this community. It has been an amazing run over the last several months that I've been doing these videos. I appreciate each and every one of you guys that have taken the time to watch this and also to drop some comments here. So thank you guys. Take care.